Hey guys, it's Misha from UFO Files. It's been a while, but I'm glad to be back. Today I'm going to be talking about the shadow government conspiracy and where it comes from. In the UFO community, much like in the conspiracy world, the term shadow government is one that most of us are more familiar with. However, it is also a term that very likely means different things to each one of us. Furthermore, it is used often interchangeably, including by ourselves to refer to anything from secret departments in any number of country governments to alleged shadowy cables to them politically, militarily, or purely people of great influence who control the workings of the entire planet from undisclosed, often hidden in plain sight locations. As such, then pinpointing the realities, truths, and disinformation of such groups is by the very nature of the charge almost impossible, and once again considering the mammoth task of unraveling such an enigma, such findings would take up volumes upon volumes, not to mention a lifetime to achieve. Needless to say, what we will do here is attempt to give a Reader's Digest overview of these apparent secretive and potentially deadly goings-on in the background of everyday life. We should also remember, however true such notions may or may not be, several well-known conspiracy writers have met ultimately, and at least to some, extremely suspicious ends following their research and apparent proof of these inner workings of the apparent secret cable that oversees the world's events. For example, we have examined before the claims of the octopus made by Danny Casolaro, also examined the apparent alternative claims of events in the Gemstone Files. It is from such dark conspiracies that the equally dark notion of a shadow government comes. Essentially, an unseen hand that controls each one of us, directly or indirectly. And what's more, it leaks almost every aspect of our lives. Number 1. The Real Menace. Many of us, certainly in the contemporary age of the 2000s, might think of David Icke when the subject of a cabal-like world government is brought up. And that is understandable. Icke certainly has taken the notion forward, whether in his claims of reptilian overlords, explanations behind the death of Diana, or his exceptional breakdown of the Twin Tower attacks. However, many other writers had highlighted such a potentially secretive group of influential people previously. We have already mentioned the work of Danny Casolaro, for example, and his claims of Octopus, a cabal who controlled events around the world. In his book, In God's Name, David Yallop demonstrated intricately the connections between the P2 Lodge and the Vatican, and from there, the influence on world events in places in Europe and as far as South America. Stephen Knight demonstrated an equally astonishing set of connections between secret societies and almost all aspects of British government, industry, finance, and public service sectors in his best-selling book The Brotherhood. In fact, Knight had demonstrated a similar set of connections in his previous book, Jack the Ripper, The Final Solution. If his findings are correct, he reveals one of the biggest cover-ups in history. Even as far back as the early 1920s, John Hylan, the mayor of New York and certainly a person of high office and authority, would state, "The real menace of our republic is the invisible government, which like a giant octopus sprawls its slimy legs over our cities, states, and nation." In short, as much as many people scoff and cry conspiracy theorists at those who bring up such a possibility of a shadowy cable ruling all aspects of society, the amount of evidence to support such claims is truly astounding. Number 2. Common knowledge of a shadowy ruling elite. The idea of a ruling elite would appear to have been common knowledge, at least to some on the outside of it, for quite some time throughout history. As well as the aforementioned John Hylan, for example, one-time United States President. Theodore Roosevelt's political party would claim of its invisible government, one with no allegiance or acknowledged responsibility to anyone but themselves. Even before Orwell's famous fictional book, 1984, Edward Bernays would write in the book Propaganda in 1928 how the manipulation of habits and opinions was one of the keys to a democratic society. Furthermore, those who manipulate such public feeling are the true ruling power. He would further state that we are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. One of the crucial aspects of a shadow government is that those who pull the strings must be the content to do so in anonymity. This, as Stephen Knight suggests in the previously mentioned Brotherhood, is where the power truly lies. Such a notion seemingly underlies the conspiracies around a supposed Fourth Reich, which contended that many high-ranking Nazis and members of the Third Reich in Hitler's Germany had fled Europe following the war. They would eventually settle in the United States, either through sympathizers to their ideology or as part of Operation Paperclip. We have examined previously, for example, if Hitler himself might have been one of those who escaped the tatters of Europe in the final days of the war. As preposterous as that idea is to some, again, circumstantial evidence is convincing, to say the least. Of course, Hitler, if we accept the theories as fact for a moment, would arrive in Argentina as opposed to the United States. However, according to declassified FBI documents, the American authorities were aware of his apparent arrival in South America. How much more they might have known is still today very much open to debate. This is an interesting notion, not least perhaps due to many of the MK Ultra mind control programs and genetic experiments that seemingly continued in America where the Nazis left off. This is certainly a world of difference between the United States and Nazi Germany. There is, though, sufficient, if circumstantial evidence, that many from the Nazi regime were allowed to continue their work in the West, as opposed to their minds being utilized by the Soviet regime in the Cold War following the World War II. In fact, as we have looked at before, the 20th centuries and the two world wars that still scar it did not only provide fertile ground for opportunistic change, there are many researchers who believe the conflicts, if not set up outright, were certainly encouraged from the sideline. Intelligence agencies such as the CIA and the eventual NSA have their roots in the activities of American diplomats operating and seemingly influencing events from Switzerland in the years during and between the wars. And when the claims of such people, or groups of people, indeed, of funding both sides and of inflaming political emotions and uprisings in nations where it benefited them and their interests are taken into account, it is easy to see where such distrust and suspicion stems from. Even today, in our modern political and social climate, this last statement isn't that much of a stretch to the imagination. In terms of UFOs, then, where does the shadow government fit in? It appears obvious that such an invisible force was not a reaction to the sudden UFO sightings of the mid-1940s. And it should also perhaps be obvious to us that such an issue of unknown intelligence coming from other worlds would, if possible, be kept from the population at large by such an unofficial department. This would appear to be an almost impossible task to undertake in police, unless, of course, there is a huge conspiracy afoot, and that is, essentially, what certain researchers suggest is the case. And that is not to say that we should dismiss such claims. After all, the bigger and brasher the conspiracy, the easier it is to hide behind such easy dismissals. Following the Roswell crash, and at least according to conspiracy theories, the several more that followed, a shadow department came together to oversee such incidents. In reality, and if accurate, this was likely formed from members already in such a secretive role. They would adopt all aspects of UFO sightings and encounters under one officially non-existent wing. We have examined previously the idea that it is the propulsion systems that are of importance to this secretive organization, or more importantly, making sure such technology doesn't enter the public arena, lest it affects the huge profits, ones derived from oil sales. Once more, it is an idea that sounds both bizarre and probable at the same time. It certainly isn't beyond the stretch of the imagination to think that, should such advanced technology quite literally fall out of the sky, if humanity could understand, replicate, and utilize such a technology, it would free us from the slippery grip of the oil industry. Some conspiracies, though, go much further. As I mentioned above, one of the strangest and most intriguing conspiracies surrounding a shadowy ruling elite and UFOs and alien encounters revolve around a race of aliens. Ones who already live among us, and in the reptilian conspiracy, have done so for thousands of years. Such a notion, albeit in allegorical form, is explored in the movie They Live, and in a more direct way in the popular television series of the early 1980s, V. In fact, so close was the plot between V and Nikki's general theme of reptilian alien overlords that it wasn't something lost on his detractors. That said, the idea itself is certainly not a new one, and many researchers have suggested over the years that truth is passed on, hidden in fiction. Might this be one of those occasions? Or might such a hybridization be more in line with the alien abduction phenomena as per the research of Dr. David Jacobs? We have also examined Jacobs' research before, and his firm belief that the purpose of the alien abduction phenomena is to create a hybrid alien-human race, one that would take over humanity from within. A seemingly bizarre theory in its own right, although we should note how Jacobs is a very serious-minded person, not someone prone to wild and outlandish statements without reason to make them. But its very nature, the alien phenomenon, is rife for such ideas as a ruling elite to take hold. We should very much treat them with a good pinch of salt. We should, however, perhaps not discount them entirely. If there is any truth to a shadow government, regardless of where it came from or its original intentions, it would not surprise any of us that UFO and alien encounters would be of interest to them. We are no closer than at the end of the article than we were at the start to pinning down who this shadow government is, and what exactly their agenda might be. It would appear, however, almost certain that a loose organization of like-minded individuals does very much exist. Their interests, possibly political, financial, ideological, or a combination of all of those. Such meetings of the apparent Bilderberg group, though, do little to dampen the flames of such conspiracies. In fact, although a difficult assertion to prove, the groups who have successfully drawn attention to the Bilderberg's meetings in recent years appeared surprisingly quiet in their online presence, certainly by recent standards, in the summer of 2019. Perhaps security was tightened in this time around, or maybe the group's meetings is something in the shadow government do not wish to know. Whatever the circumstances, whenever such a group of obviously powerful people meet in such secrecy, who quite literally in some case hold people's lives in their hands, with the decisions they make, the rest of the people, those whose lives will be affected one way or another, become unsurprisingly suspicious. Only true transparency and open-mindedness on all sides will erode that suspicion. Our world is one where secrets on various levels are, at times, a necessity. With that in mind, that transparency might not be forthcoming anytime soon. Thank you for watching today's video on the shadow government conspiracy and where does it come from. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe so Bill can keep me around. Until then folks, stay safe, stay awesome, and I shall see you next time. Bye guys!
Alright, kick back, relax, and grab yourself a beverage. Or hop if you wanna just bounce to my leverage. The evidence, as they say, is in the pudding. So show me the money like my name was Cuba Gooding. It ain't fool